Hi everybody. For this week's interview, we have the lovely Mike Power with us. He is the editor of the Traveller Voice magazine, amongst other things that he does in his part-time as well. And I'll let Mike tell you a little bit more about Mike, because when I asked him to send me a little bit about himself, it was quite a big bit. So I couldn't really squeeze it all in because he does an awful lot. So Mike, hi, how are you? Welcome. Thanks for coming.
Hi. Kay, thank you very much for having me on. Sorry about that. Yeah, it's the writer in me. I just kind of have, send it all off, everything I've done from here since I was born.
Yeah, like usually I have to go back to people saying, no, tell me a little bit more. But with yours, I was like, I can't post all that on Facebook. So you can tell us now anyway. So tell us a bit about yourself and how you went back to education and things like that.
Okay, so hi everyone. As Kay said, my name is Mike Power. I'm the editor and manager of Traveller's Voice magazine. Traveller's Voice magazine is it's a magazine that comes out bi-monthly or 5 times a year now. Our tagline is the other side of the story. So what the magazine aims to do is tell the other side of the story when it comes to travellers, the side that's not necessarily printed in mainstream media. So we're kind of, the magazine itself has been going from 1993. And I'm going forward now, so I'll take a step back actually, Kay. So when I was growing up, we would have gotten a magazine out in the post. We would have had a subscription to the magazine, and back then it was called Voice of the Traveller magazine, but everyone called it the book. And I later found out when I started working for the book in 2008 that a lot of people called it that. It wasn't. It was just the book that came in the post. And I had started with Voice of the Traveller in 2008, mid-2008, but I started as a volunteer. My first year within the magazine was a sales capacity, and it was just, it wasn't paid or anything like that, but I had been out of work for about 6 months. I'd worked since I was about 17, but I'd been out of work for about 6 months and didn't want to stay at home kind of doing nothing. And I wasn't sure, Kay, either what kind of direction my life was going in, So an opportunity come up with Involve, or NATC as it was back then, to volunteer for the magazine, and I went for it,
And did you ever think, like when you were a little lad, did you ever look at the book and think, Jesus, I'd love to be involved with writing stories or taking pictures or anything like that?
Yeah, no, okay, I suppose it was inconceivable. You'd never see yourself. You'd see people who publish a magazine as really intelligent or really clever people or really arty people, and obviously it's not the case.
You are all of them.
But yeah, looking back at old issues in the head office now, there's a couple of issues from the mid-90s that I'm in, and I would have never, I suppose, seen that guy that's in those images, or that kid that's in those images, as the future editor of the magazine itself,
Well, just pause on that for a second, because that actually leads us on to one of the good questions from one of our young people, and they want to know, like, how did you get into being a journalist? How would you go about it? What advice would you give a young person who wanted to be a journalist? Especially, as you say, it's not something you often hear of as a traveller, as a journalist. So.
Yeah, so I suppose for me, Kay, I was always interested in writing. I more so poetry. Now, when I was in primary school, I had written loads of poetry, and I wouldn't have necessarily been great at anything else. Irish, I'd have actually been sent to other classes during Irish and geography and stuff like that, and history, But English I was pretty good at. So I think, and the advice I give people is, if you have an interest in writing, the degrees and the qualifications can come afterwards, and I say that when I recruit reporters for the magazine, it's not necessarily your qualification, it's your interest in, first of all, the publication, and your interest within the travel community itself, because you can have an amazing journalist with so many qualifications in journalism and be a brilliant writer. This is it, and they don't understand the community, they don't have interest in learning about the community, and for a publication like ours, that comes before journalism,
And you yourself went back to education, didn't you? Like, were you worried about going to college? Like, what kind of a time did you have in secondary school? Like, when you were in secondary school, did you ever think you were going to go to college?
So first of all, I'm kind of the age now, okay, that there wasn't necessarily a push on putting travellers in secondary school, so I didn't go to secondary school at all. I went to primary school, and like a lot of young people still now, I had done my junior cert applied through a training course here at Athlone Training Centre, I think it was called, and that's when I was 15. But
But that
secondary
wasn't
school
that
wasn't.
wasn't in the mainstream secondary school. That was in a
No, no. My mainstream education stopped when I was 12 in primary school, you know. So the whole fact uh, that you go from that setting in primary school, a setting of being surrounded by loads of people, to going into a more condensed environment in the training centre was surreal anyway. So going back as an adult into a situation where there's loads of people, uh, I was kind of expecting more of a primary school uh, education, that sort of format, than
yeah.
then the more casual and laid back. Like when I first went back to education as an adult, I was terrified. You know, I was terrified. I wouldn't be the most social person anyway. You know, not in terms of good out. I'm not a recluse, but I would surround myself with few people. You know, and being put in this, or pushing myself to be in a situation where there's 30 people, 30 other adults within a class. You know, and like it's surreal. Initially, it's surreal. You know.
But it was a big step. Like, it's a big step for anyone to go back to college. But I think especially if you've had either a bad or a negative or a strange experience, like, because when I think of you, because I know you're a little bit younger than me, I wouldn't have considered you being in the age group of people who from the traveling community who wouldn't have gone on to secondary school. Like, it's mad. I think people think it's something that happened, like, 30 years ago or 40 years ago, but like, that's quite current for you not to go on to.
Yeah, it's pretty current. Like we're looking at, I'm mid-30s now. So when I was kind of in primary school, it wasn't necessarily a thing where there was any insistence that travellers would go to secondary school. You know, there wasn't the law in place now where you have to be 16 in order to leave secondary school, you know, or you'll be your parents will be fined, you know. There was none of that. And I suppose, Kate, there should have been, because I remember when I was leaving primary school in sixth class, one of my primary school teacher for sixth class had seen something in me that I hadn't yet seen, and she had insisted that I do what was called back then the assessment test to go into secondary school. I don't think you have that now at all.
No, they still do an entrance exam. It's called,
An entrance exam, yes. So back then it was called the assessment test, and I told my mum that I was going to do the assessment test. And she was like, well, yeah, great, okay. So she kind of supported me, and my family had supported me in the sense that, right, Mike wants to go to secondary school. Let's see how practical this is, you know. But come the Saturday morning of my assessment test, my primary school teacher actually pulled up outside the door and said to me, your test has started or is about to start, you know, why aren't you at the school? And my mum rushed to get me ready and sent me off to the test in the community college, actually in Athlone, and I failed.
Yeah.
You know, I failed. Like, there was different models, not different models, different subjects like history and geography and Irish. And in primary school, okay, these are the subjects I was put out into the special class.
I remember the travel class.
We were running. You know, this travel class, and I was great at making jigsaws and great at making toast, but I couldn't actually tell you anything about our history, you know, until I had obviously left and done my junior certified. So that was kind of my experience of education. You know, like going from that into a setting as an adult, you know, it's daunting having to having an understanding of what education is and what it should look like, you know, and then being challenged by that perception when you're in a third level environment, you know.
No, and I remember the girls in my class being taken out for the traveller to the traveller teacher and things like that. And remember there was kids kind of sitting going, where are they going? And you knew they weren't going to remedial class because other girls went to remedial class and they weren't in their class. And I remember kind of going, and it wasn't until years later, like, you know, as an adult, I found out what happened. I was going, what do you mean, you know, you didn't do Irish? Oh, and as one person told me, now this is the words of a friend of mine who said, was the teacher more or less told her, so why would you teach a traveller Irish? And I was kind of, oh my God, you were told that as a kid, like, you know what I mean? So it's no wonder that so many people from the traveling community have such a bad
Oh, yeah.
education. You know what I mean?
Like Irish, like, when are you going to use it?
What are you going to
You
use
know,
it for? Yeah.
and when are you going to use history? I mean, we had that, and a lot of my family and my extended family had the exact same experience in primary school. So going on to secondary school would have been a negative
Hmm.
um, thing anyway, even if it was embraced and expected from us. Um,
And what about college then? Did you find that a very positive experience, or was it
I
scary?
did. So
Lost
the
touch?
first time I had went back here, I was actually employed. So I could only ever go back to college on a part-time
Hmm.
basis or in an evening course. And I think that's what's kind of missing in the third level system at the moment. Like I would do this courses I'd have loved to have done, but it would have meant giving up your job and applying
Oh
yourself
yeah,
full
meet your
time.
sister. Yeah, same here.
No, it's a major obstacle. Like I'm really interested in animals. I'd love to have come back at one stage to do either veterinary nursing or, something along the lines of that. But it's a full-time course. Um, I suppose looking back, my education and especially my third level education was very much an organic thing. I opportunities arose when they needed to arise for me.
Mhm.
Um, and it suited me, that sort of education kind of suited me because I could still remain employed and I could still live alone, because
Yeah,
I moved out when I was quite young as well.
yeah. So speaking of animals, how are your boys? How many doggies do you have now?
They're great. There's none of them around me. I've got three of them. So I've got Staffy.
Yeah.
He is 6 this year. His name is Teddy. He was in the vet this week actually. He's got a pinched nerve on his back. Uh,
You've
I
met
should have called him Bill.
Teddy.
Yeah. uh, the Yorkie is Alfie. I was actually in your project in Trim one day, myself and James. And I think we had been doing interviews at the time when I had fostered
Oh,
Alfie.
that's right. Yeah.
And that was 4 years ago.
Yeah.
Couldn't give him up. And of course, there's Rocco, who's
There's
a
Rocco who
Chihuahua,
doesn't like me. Doesn't
who
like
doesn't like anyone, who doesn't
me.
like me, who actually went for me this morning, but he's the feisty one, we need someone to keep it measured.
Keep us in line. Keep us in line. Listen, and one of the last questions I have from one of our young people was, and this is probably going to be really hard and a horrible question. Who was your favorite person that you put in the magazine, or that you got the opportunity to give a platform to, or do you know what I mean? Like who you personally? I know that people are probably going, well, it's probably such and such, but to you personally, who was the story that you got that you went, oh yes, and it came across well and was received well?
Yeah, that's a really a difficult question. I'd
Mm.
like to know who asked that question.
Yeah.
Kay, was it you?
No, it wasn't me. It
Yeah.
wasn't me. It was one of my youth workers, all right, but it wasn't me. Yeah, because
Ah,
we do get your magazine in, and we love
yeah,
getting it in, and the young people love getting it in, and we've been in it ourselves quite a good bit. You always
yes,
give us a great platform to share what we're doing and all the rest. So the young people, they love the magazine because, like say the week you've had like singers in it, or you've had someone who's like semi-celeb, and then we could be in the same magazine as them. They're like, oh my god, we're in the same
yeah,
magazine as such and such, like, you know what I mean? So
yeah,
it's great that you always give us that space and that opportunity to have our story. So apart from me and my project
yeah.
and our young people, who has been your favorite or what's been your favorite story, do you think?
Well, first of all, I'll say, Kay, I absolutely appreciate your content within the magazine as well. You're doing amazing stuff there in Meath. And it's the kind of stuff that we love highlighting. I say we
As
as
I
though
say,
I
when
have
people say something like
myself.
that, it's easy to do good work when you have good people. Like I have a great
Absolutely.
and I have a great group of young people. So our stories are easy to look great because they're great. Do you know what I
Yeah,
mean? But yeah, it is
yeah,
great to have that opportunity.
yeah.
So come on, you don't want to know this question. I
So
want
back,
to.
so back to your question, I suppose, like if we look at the magazine itself, um, we are looking at inspirational stories. We're looking at people speaking about mental health. We're looking at people speaking about education and promoting positive mental health. Men speaking about mental health, which is something that we can find can be difficult to do within the wider community and mind the travel community. So I suppose looking at interviews that I have done, they all kind of reach me in one way or another, but I suppose for me, I had done an interview last year, or myself and my colleague Miriam had done an interview last year with this woman from Wexford, and her name was Minnie Connors. Now, Minnie is well known within
Yeah, I
the
know
travel
Minnie.
community, and she's an activist, and she's an amazing woman. And she had such a candid conversation about something very, very sensitive, that you can't help but be struck by people like this. You know, they're putting themselves out there, speaking about a topic that's that's out of hand within the traveller community, yet we're still reluctant to speak about, you know. And for an individual to raise their hand and say, actually, you know what, I don't mind going on the front cover of your magazine, because this is my message and it's very important. And it's people like that, and this is the kind of stories that we don't hear in mainstream news, you know. She's one example. I mean, I have interviewed, and I've had conversations with some amazing people, and I've told some amazing stories. And what I say is, if you take part in an interview with a magazine, it's dispelling the stereotypes or the myths that are so much cast against the community. You know, so whatever you think you're doing, or whatever you're doing, you may think it's trivial to you, you know, or you may think it's not newsworthy or worth writing a feature around. It absolutely is, because there's people out there who say that the traveller community aren't like this. You know, the traveller community don't play handball, they're all out boxing and they're all out killing each other, you know.
And you're like, oh, hang on a second.
Hold on a second, issue 121, I spoke to this person, and it's amazing to have that up, that it's amazing to have that platform, you know, and be able to deliver that platform.
It's actually where the idea for these interviews came from, because one night having a very candid conversation with a group of people, some friends, and, you know, people can have their ideas about the traveling community and very disparaging, swiping marks about, you know, a whole group of people. And I was saying, like, God, if he's only got to meet who I get to meet all the time.
Yeah.
And then I was kind of like, oh, hang on a second, why don't I let people meet the people I get to meet? And, you know, let people see that there's so much more to every community, never mind the traveling community. There's so much more to every community than people hear of in the mainstream news or in the media, like, you know what I mean? And it's important.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And it's giving people that voice, you know, as well. Like, what we're essentially doing by recording, or what you're doing by recording, is taking a snapshot in time. So like, these recordings will hopefully be here in 50, 60 years time, as with the magazine, because we go into libraries that have to hold on to it, you know. So when people look back on the traveller community in 50 years time, or during this COVID pandemic, what did they look like? What did they speak about? What were their levels of education? You know, all of this. We're taking snapshots of people on a very real basis. And these interviews are absolutely amazing for that, you know.
Yeah, no, and it is great. Like, I have such a long list. I could go all year. Like, it's so funny. I'm actually literally going to people now, I'll get to you in 2 weeks or 3 weeks, because it's been great. And there's responses being great, you know what I mean, from both communities. You know,
yeah, and I'm tuning in, like, and my friends are tuning into you as well, and in the head office and involved. You know, we're all really interested to hear what people are saying. Like, I heard you speaking to Leanne McDonough, and she's a fantastic woman, you know, and we're fortunate to be part of the Make No Memories competition that she had ran, and herself and her colleague Maria had ran for the month of May. A fantastic individual. But their voices aren't as loud sometimes as the negative press that the community gets. So any opportunity we have to propel them, you know, absolutely go for it, you know.
Listen, Mike, I could talk to you all day long, as per usual, and I can't wait till I get back down to Athlone to head office to see you.
Yes.
Yeah, I know. I do miss you. So
it's been months now, actually.
Thank you so much for coming on and having the chat with us. And yeah, we'll see you soon.
Anytime, Kate. Thank you so much for having me.
Not at all. Thank you.